Hi, everybody. I'm super excited about this interview today. I'm here with Patti DeNucci, who is the author of The Intentional Network, and she has a vast amount of experience in how to use your image to be more influential and also to use your image to get more business and to work with people that are probably a little bit more qualified. So I'm going to let her explain to you guys a little bit more about what she does, and then we're going to get into the dirty details about how she can offer some value today on how you position yourself and how your image affects the business that you're in. So Patti, thanks for being with us today, and tell me a little bit more about what you do.
Well, thanks for having me, Thomas. I appreciate it. Wow, what do I do? Well, I have taken a lifetime of experience and observation, and I put it into a book called The Intentional Networker, which you can get on Amazon. It's been out for quite a while. I try to teach people not only how to make a good first impression, but also how to make and build and even attract conversations and connections that are going to make an impact in their, not just their business, but also in their life. And I do that via speaking, via my blogs, my books. I'm working on another book about conversation and connection. I speak at conferences. I speak and do workshops with companies and organizations. And I basically grew up in a family where the business that my grandfather and my father ran was literally a success, one conversation at a time. So that's what I'm all about.
So let's dive into conversation a little bit, since that seems to be your current area of investigation. So when it comes to conversation, what would you say would be the percentage is held on the first impression for the success of that conversation?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it depends. I think it depends on both people who are involved. I have definitely gone into conversations begrudgingly, thinking that the person I was going to be talking to wasn't going to be interesting or have anything meaningful to say, and I've been wrong. I'm learning a lot about being wrong, about first impressions. However, that said, I think there are things that people can do and people can present themselves in such a way that they are more, let's use the word attractive, more approachable. And there are definitely words and things that you can say to make a conversation start off on the right foot, as opposed to blundering on through it and having to, slog through the mud to get to the good stuff.
Right,
So first
right.
impressions do matter. They do matter.
And so that's a huge part of how the rest of the conversation would go, I would imagine.
It can definitely do that. But I'm guessing that many people out there listening have either thought they were entering a great conversation and it went south pretty badly, or just ended up being kind of a experience, or they've gone into a conversation thinking, oh, what could this person possibly have to tell me that would be interesting? And they end up enthralled or walking away with a piece of information or an insight that was invaluable.
Right. Well, tell me, let's kind of walk through the mechanics of a conversation, start to finish. Let's put it in a networking sense, where you're meeting people for the
Okay.
first time. Maybe if you're a
Mm-hmm.
business owner, you're meeting new investors. Maybe if you're a business owner, you might be meeting new clients. What are some of the mechanics? What are some of the mapping for
Okay.
a conversation? You obviously want a good first impression, but then how do you keep that conversation from kind of tanking?
Well, I think I want to back up even before the conversation starts and even before you're in the presence of that person. And I strongly encourage people to do some preparation work in the long run and also right before a conversation takes place, if it's possible. And that is to think about, who are you? What kind of a person are you? What kind of conversations do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy going to a lively networking event or a conference where there are a lot of people and you get to mix and mingle? Or are you more of a sit down one-on-one kind of a person? Really getting to know
Mm,
yourself. That's huge. Knowing what it is you want, big picture, small picture. And maybe if you don't know exactly what you want, can you be open to what another person can bring to you, even if it's to change your mind or to enlighten you? And then we get into the piece that I know you initially wanted to talk about, and that's show up. First of all, show up, period. And secondly, show up according to who you really are and
yes.
what you want. And I think that was the basis for my intentional networker. So I just want to show it one more time.
Mm,
For my intentional networker book is to get people thinking about the pre-work that they have to do
mm.
before they even go out into the world and start connecting with others. So that's a huge first piece. That's actually 3 steps. Think about who you
Yeah.
are, what you want, and then show up accordingly.
Well, I think preparation is often left to the back burner in a lot of social situations.
Really is. And
Yeah.
here I see this all the time, and I get questions that bring me to this conclusion that people show up at a social event or at a coffee meeting, and they kind of just show up and expect something magical to happen. They
Yeah.
haven't put any preparation into it, and yet it's also one of the most um, agonizing and anxiety producing experiences that many people have.
Yeah.
The people who are introverts. I just have to interject and say I'm what's called an ambivert, which means I am literally half introvert, half extrovert, which means I
Interesting.
definitely understand both sides. I love being with people and chatting and all of that, and then I hit a wall and I have to just retreat and recharge.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So let's say you're now in the conversation, you've done your prep work, you show up, and now you're in the conversation. There obviously you don't want to be in the conversation to take. That's
Hmm.
obviously kind of a red
Oh
flag.
yeah.
People get turned off. You got to have this ebb and flow to it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because there is an ebb and flow, and there's a dynamic of, you don't just, especially if you have a purposeful a reason to talk to somebody, you don't want to go in and just dive in and start taking from them,
Sure.
unless, like, there are exceptions. We can talk about that in a minute, but I think first of all, you have to have a pleasant, warm demeanor. And
Sure.
what is it going to take to give you a pleasant and warm demeanor? How are you going to how are you going to prepare yourself? And then secondly, a good greeting, a good handshake, being present. Um,
I think it's a big one. And today, I want to stop you there because in this day and age of technology, and just wanted to do a rapid fire pitch, being present
mhm.
is becoming a very scarce commodity. It really is.
Being very, very present, um, being willing to ask the right questions. Ask the questions that are going to create the conversation that you're looking for. And that is, I mean, it's so interesting. It's interesting. Before we started doing this, I was working on, remapping out how my book is going to flow, and questions are so huge. And, it can be a rapport building set of questions, like, how are you doing? Tell me more about what your day has been like, getting it warmed up. And then maybe you have a question that actually shifts the conversation into the conversation that you purposely really want to have.
Right. And setting that intention beforehand to understand
Hmm.
what and that doesn't mean that you're going to gain something every time.
That's
And
right.
there's a
That's
school
right.
there's a school of thought that says that you should go into every interaction just with the assumption that you're not going to get anything out of it. So there's no expectation.
That is correct. And you have to go in with the expectation that you're really there to give first.
Yeah.
Fill the bank account, dig your well before you're thirsty, that whole thing, Harvey McKay. I
Yep.
believe that's who said that.
Yep.
Yeah, so you have to go in. I have made the mistake. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine works for a company that I would really like to have as a client. And he brought into town a person who's a good friend, but also higher up in the company than he is, and is closer to making those decisions. So he invited me over to have coffee with them. I dove way too fast into what I do and how I can serve them. And my thinking was, I didn't want to waste their time. I knew that
Right.
they had some personal, and I wanted to just kind of get right into it. And I didn't know how much prep my friend had given this man. But afterwards, my friend said, geez, what was that all about? That wasn't you at all. That wasn't the friendly, sparkly, cheery, personable person. You just dove right in. And I was astounded at myself, because that's normally not like me to be
Mm.
that way. So I've made the mistakes. And
Well,
so sometimes,
an adage that I always remember is that you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. And so when you are trying to be in an interaction and you want to be the sizzle, right? So again,
Mhm.
as when I work with clients on positioning and messaging and optics and stuff, I tell them, look, they don't remember the words you say. They can't
Mhm.
go back. You can't go back to a president's speech or a corporate leader's speech and say exactly the quotes that he said, but you can remember how that person made you feel.
Made you feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's that sizzle. And so in your
Yes.
scenario, what happens? You went right for the steak,
I
right?
went right for it, and it was partly because I didn't want to waste anybody's time, but
Yeah,
that was in my head. I
right,
I should have had a deeper conversation with my friend on how should I do this? How much time do I have? So
right.
see, I didn't do the prep work that
Yeah.
I totally could have done. So
So
that
what are
was
your
my
thoughts?
mistake.
So when it comes to networking, what are your thoughts about exchanging information afterwards? Is there? I mean, there's sometimes when I do that, there's like there's this lingering expectation that, oh, if I exchange information, maybe I'm going to have to do business with this person.
Oh
That
yeah.
the ending of the interaction can be super awkward. So how do you avoid that? Do you think
I think it just really depends. It even gets to the point on should we exchange business cards?
at all?
You know how that goes. I
Yeah,
know I've been to events, I'm sure you have too, where you barely have made the introduction, like, hi, I'm Patty,
right.
da da da, and then all of a sudden the business cards come out,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and sometimes that just feels awkward. Or worse yet, you sit down at the luncheon table and someone comes over to sit at the table and they pull out their cards and they're dealing them out like it's a blackjack table in Vegas. It's like, wait a minute, dude, I don't even know your name yet, and you're handing out the cards. And I think part of that is efficiency. Like, okay, I'm here to network. Everybody's here to network. They're making the assumption. But the way I like to do it is I like to have the conversation, whatever it's going to be about. It could be about the weather. It could be about something far deeper. It could be about, how did you hear about this meeting? Do you know the speaker? What are you here to learn? It can get deeper, but I think you can always, if someone offers you a card, I mean, I always take it. I've never
Sure.
refused somebody's card, and I've always been happy to hand out mine.
Sure.
Um, but I sure don't like it when someone automatically puts me on their subscription list
Right.
to their whatever it is they're sending
Right.
out. And I'm sure most people feel that way. So I think it's a matter of the follow up. You talk about the follow up.
Yeah.
I I'll tell you what I do, and people still, are kind of shocked that I say this, especially in conference settings or where you're going to meet a number of people. I could bring a baggies worth of business cards back to my hotel room, and I will literally go through each one. And if I can't remember the person or the conversation, I throw them away.
Mm,
Well, there might be a
interesting.
few exceptions where it's like, oh, this person sounds interesting, but I don't remember what we
Right.
talked about. So I just find that I want to keep the ones that I want to keep. And then I'll send a quick follow up by email and just say something very simple as, it was great to meet you at wherever the event was on whatever
Yeah.
the date was. I loved our conversation about blah, blah. I may include one more piece of information or a resource that has nothing to do with me. Well, maybe I'll point them to a blog I've done that is on that topic that maybe I mentioned in the conversation. But, I don't put a sell on people because it's like dating. You just don't want to
Right.
go there right away.
Right. Right. So would you then adhere to the philosophy of having like five really good interactions at an event versus trying to
Hmm.
get to everyone?
Oh, are you talking about five? If you
Like
meet five people?
five really good
Yes.
interactions versus just
Yes.
trying to deal it out per se, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're more introverted, that's a good day to have five good conversations. It's interesting you
Yeah.
say that because I usually say 3 to 5.
Okay,
At a
good.
typical networking meeting where there's anywhere from maybe 40 people to 100, that's a good day. I mean, think about it. You're only there for a couple of hours
Right,
and you
exactly.
have the program.
Sure.
Um, but there are definitely people who will mix and mingle and love to work the room, and that's fine for them, but that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah. Do you think as a whole, do you think that really is beneficial if you work the room? I mean, I don't want to make any ultimate
Mm,
statements here, but I mean, what I
yeah,
have found in my experience, if you kind of work the room and you get to 20, 30 people, I mean, half of them, or maybe even a quarter of them, if you recontact them, they don't remember who you are. But
right.
if I work the room and get to like 5 or 6 people, they're like, oh
Hmm.
yeah. And plus, you have a little bit more time
Yeah.
to get a little bit more deeper, you know?
I think it depends on what you want. Are you wanting visibility? Are you wanting, maybe you are a part of a committee it's their job to go around and know as many people as you can, make people feel welcome and it's friendly atmosphere. You want to give that impression. Um, the School of Protocol in Washington,
Yeah,
their guideline is to introduce yourself to everybody in the room if you can. I know that gets ridiculous after a while.
yeah,
um, I've gone to meetings where I know half the people and then I don't know the other half, and I will go around and of course greet everybody who I know, because that's part of the reason why I'm there too, is to see people I haven't seen in a while.
right.
But then I do my best to reach out, especially to the person who's standing off by themselves. I mean, that is a
Yeah,
gimme. That's one of the, when people say, oh, where do I get started? Go find someone who's standing by themselves, introduce yourself. I've
yeah,
met some amazing people that way.
yeah. That kind of branches off to my next question. So then, how do you select? So you're gonna go if you okay. Let's say everybody listening. Let's say you stack this correctly. You do your prep
Okay.
work. You show up. You're present. Okay. You've done your prep work. Who do you start with? Do you start with now you've done your prep work. Now you know who's
Mm-hmm.
at the top of the
Mm-hmm.
chain, the food chain in that group. You're gonna know who's the CEO. You maybe or you're gonna know the presenter. You're gonna know who that person is. So do you start there? Do you start in the middle? Do you just start kind of randomly? Do you pick that person in the corner? Again, maybe the answer to this is it depends on what you want, but what is your take on where you start?
I think it depends on what's happening in the room.
Okay.
And I've definitely gone to an event wanting 100% to have the opportunity to say hello and introduce myself to the speaker or to the organizer or to the host or to a certain person that I know is going to be there. If I'm feeling comfortable, I mean, I'm not going to dash across the room and
Right.
make a fool of myself, but I will have prepared. If I know they're in the room, I will have prepared myself on what am I going to say to them. For example, if it's a speaker, I may say, um, you know, Bob, I'm Patti DeNucci. If I know they're a member of National Speakers Association, which is
Yeah.
that's a club, it's
Mhm.
an association. I may say, I'm Patti DeNucci. I'm past president of the Austin chapter. Tell them a little bit, and that automatically lets that person know that I'm one of them. And I may have a specific question. I may say, geez, I read your book. I specifically loved chapter 4. It was full of epiphanies. I mean, give them
Mhm.
a reason to listen to you.
You want to be careful not to feel like you're flattering on purpose.
Well, not sucking up.
Yeah, right.
Definitely not
But
that.
I mean, many people do that, and
Oh, yeah.
it's a slippery slope, right?
Oh, yes.
I mean,
I've definitely had people come up to me and just gush all over me, and I've just said, "I'll go. Here we go. What is it that they want from me?"
right.
But sincere thanks and appreciation, I think, is always welcome. Um, I was on a panel. I went to a meeting and I was on a panel with the CEO of National Instruments, who apparently, even if you work there, he's really hard to get to. And I just appreciated what a great guy he was.
Mm.
And at the end of the meeting, he had a beer with the rest of us. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's cool.
he didn't, do his
Yeah,
thing and
yeah.
leave. He hung
Cool.
around, and I just said, I really appreciate you're the leader of a really important company that's doing really well, and I feel really honored that you're here, but it's also really cool that you're just enjoying yourself with us. I just
Yeah.
was authentic.
Yeah, so I guess it just matters on the situation and your
Yeah.
intention. Setting that intention first would be
Hmm.
really, really important.
Setting the intention, I would say, don't go over the top. Neither be too aggressive nor too timid. Neither one of those techniques works, and I've been the victim of both, and I've done both. And staying nice in the middle, gracious is a good word, authentic, sincere. Two other words came to mind this week. I was having a conversation with someone, and they said the two of the most attractive traits in business are warmth and competence. So
So if you can portray that in the interaction,
warmth, yeah, genuine friendliness, and showing that you know your stuff, that
yeah.
you weren't just making something up to be impressive, that if someone comes back and asks you a follow-up question, you won't stumble around
Well, this
on
leads me
that.
to my next question about it. So let's say you're in the interaction, you find somebody you really click with. Okay, you
Mm,
really click with them. This is going to be really touchy subject. How do you ask to do business with them without coming off salesy, pitchy,
Mm-hmm.
overbearing? How do you ask? I'd love to work with you.
Mm-hmm. I like what you just said, but I think you could preface that with saying, especially if you've talked for a while, like if you've had a good, are you talking about like you've spent an hour having coffee or you've spent 10 minutes at a
Let,
meeting?
let's say at a meeting, something short, a little bit more
Okay.
crunch, where it's like you really clicked with them. Maybe you're in
Mm-hmm.
similar industries or adjacent industries. Where like maybe you're in technology and this person's in cybersecurity, and you've been looking for somebody that maybe
Yeah.
did cybersecurity. How do
Mm-hmm.
you go in for that and because what that does is that takes the relationship to just from a formal
Mm-hmm.
interaction to
Yeah.
the next level.
It's
You
like
know?
it's like you're going to start dating.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Right.
okay, so another question. Are you asking because you need them or because you want to offer your services to them?
That's a great question. I think that's probably where you'd want to start, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe going into an interaction or a meeting or a conference or a networking event with something to offer somebody
Yes. Mm-hmm.
might be good.
I think sometimes it's just really fun and cool to say, wow, I can see we have a lot of things in common. I can see we run our businesses with some of the same beliefs and philosophies and values. And you can't just say that. You have to mean it.
Right.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
And you can say, it would be really cool to figure out how we could work together. And that could mean many things. That could mean maybe we're collaborators. Maybe we form a weekly accountability call. Maybe we can refer business to each other. Maybe
Right.
we can explore collaborative projects. Maybe,
Yes.
you know, and I think if you kind of say it in a way that's, let's explore this, let's think
Mm,
about it, let's consider it, as opposed to, I want to network with you, which I
yeah.
definitely, I tell a story in my book. It's just kind of funny. I was about 7 months pregnant with my son, and this was a long time ago because he's almost 28 years old. And this woman came up to me at a networking event, and I've been known as a kind of a networking expert for a long time, for sure here in Austin. And this woman came at me from across the room with her hand extended, almost like a sword, like just aggressively. And my first instinct is to protect my child. I'll never forget that. She's just one of those really, I haven't seen her in a long time, but she's just one of those really aggressive networkers that just, I just wanted to jump out of the way. It was like an incoming missile.
right.
So that's an extreme case, obviously.
Yeah. So I
But
mean,
it's,
I think it's interesting. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and it's a compliment, I think, when someone says, "Gosh, I love how you do things. I love it when I've presented at an event and someone comes up to me and says, "Wow, you practice what you preach. I love how you do things. I'd be really pleased to try to find some way to do business with you." That's a
Mhm.
compliment.
Well, I think the interesting thing here to note for anybody that's listening, when it comes to offering them something or to work with somebody, that does not necessarily mean a financial transaction.
Absolutely,
And you can sometimes be
absolutely.
more beneficial to them in other ways.
Yeah, and like for example, I was just out in Las Vegas, and while I was out there, this is both for business and pleasure. And while I was out there, I decided to call a friend of mine who lives there, who's a fellow speaker. He's way farther up the ladder than I am. He's just an amazing guy. And he always wants to get together for coffee when I'm out there. And so we did. And at the end of our coffee meeting, he said, "Are you going to the NSA Winter Conference in Houston in a couple of weeks?" And I said, "I just hadn't planned on it. And it's right in my backyard. I mean, it's
Sure.
driving distance away." He said, "I have a ticket that I'm not going to use. I just got a really lucrative engagement. Do you want the ticket?" I
Wow.
said, "Absolutely. How much did you pay for it?" And he goes, "No, you can have it. I just don't want it to
Wow.
go to waste." So,
You never know. Yeah, you
excuse
never
me?
know. You never know.
You you don't know what it's going to be. Someone can give you a referral. Someone can introduce you to the person that's going to become your future life partner.
Sure.
You
Yeah,
know,
you
they
never
can
know.
give you a quote or an interview for something you're working on, like a book or a
Right.
podcast. I
Right.
mean, this
Exactly.
is literally, is it okay to say this? This is
Sure.
literally the first time you and I have met. And
That's true. That's sweet.
graciously introduced
By
by
a
our
mutual
mutual
friend.
friend,
That's right.
Steve Iverson,
Yeah, that's
which
right.
I totally trust Steve.
I
So
love Steve. Oh,
I know what's
Steve
not to
was
love.
Steve was the pastor of mine growing up, and he was a huge mentor in my life. Then I took a public speaking course from him, and
Oh, okay.
um, it's a long story. Not going to get into here. We can do it off the air, but uh,
Okay.
this is how this can work. Because with the
Absolutely.
networking through Steve, I reached out to him recently saying I would like to, become part of the Speakers Association, and then he introduced me to you, and then now this is where we are. Now we're helping your book, and you're helping my podcast,
Oh,
and
yeah.
definitely offering some amazing value to people that are listening. So to sort of wrap up here, and then I'll have one kind of final question for you. If you were to give, let's say, your top 3 tips for positioning yourself in a social interaction, whether it's networking in 10 minutes or having coffee with someone, what would be your top 3 things to remember? People can write down and remember the next time before they go out.
Oh boy. Again, I think it goes back to what my foundational advice is. It's like really get to know yourself. That's number one. Know who you are. Know who you are and what you believe in and what you're all about and how you're going to operate. And that takes reflection and journaling and even asking your friends, taking personality tests, all that. Number 2 would be really get clear on knowing what you want. And that involves your vision, which is like your big picture, what your intentions are, which is like what choices are you going to make, and then your goals. I mean, think big picture as well as the checklist. And then the third thing is show up according to all that. And if you get those 3 things right, everything else is just tips and strategies,
Yeah,
and technique and practice, lots of practice. And make the time to get
yeah,
together with people. I,
yeah,
I I so often see people who, they have wonderful jobs and they go to their job Monday morning and they're finished on Friday afternoon. They collect their paycheck, they go home for the weekend, and their worlds stay very small. And then someday they want a different job or they get laid off and they don't really have a network to rely on.
right,
And
right.
that's really sad. That's like one of the saddest things I can think of is not having a network or a
Well,
tribe of friends.
and those are the people you serve. People just like that.
Absolutely. I serve everybody. I serve people who are already well connected. A lot of extroverts have learned from me too on how to like tame it down a little bit. And,
Yeah,
and the
I've had to learn
introverts
that.
and
Yeah,
the introverts get a little more confidence from me, and they learn that you don't have to work the room. Don't work the room. Have 3 or 4 conversations and go home.
right, right, right. Don't stress yourself out.
Yeah, don't stress.
Well, I think the overarching theme here is to really get solid in who you are, because that's going to
Hmm.
influence every interaction.
Well, and it influences how you get back to the thing about how do you show up. When people show up confident about and comfortable in their own skin, it just makes such a difference. I mean,
Yeah,
don't show up as somebody else.
yeah,
There's only one you.
that's right. And that's
Yeah.
that's the amazing thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Patty, thank you so much. Where can they find more about you?
They can find more about me at www.intentionalnetworker.com. And next week, or maybe even at the end of this week, my new website will be launching. So I'm
Oh,
very
great.
excited about that. But if people will sign up, there's a little sign up thing. You get a free chapter of my book
Okay.
and some networking tips. And then I blog. I don't do a lot of junky, spammy email, but I blog a couple times a month. Sometimes I'm inspired and it's more than that. But I try to do things that are really helpful and funny and interesting. And if people will sign up, then they'll be all in the loop when the new website pops up.
Good stuff. Well, as
Yeah.
everybody has experienced here today, she's an amazing person, warm and inviting, and she obviously lives what she preaches. And so look her up online, get that chapter, check her out, and we will definitely have her back. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.